An MSNBC analyst just made some pretty strange comments about the First Amendment.
Our deep commitment to free speech in our First Amendment, it makes us vulnerable to claims that anything we try to do to regulate speech is censorship.
We're going to break it all down, but first, I'm Brad Palumbo, and welcome back to Mediaite, your home for commentary and coverage on the intersection of politics and media. If you're new here, please do consider subscribing and sticking around, maybe even turn on those bell notifications, and don't forget to hit that like button and comment with your thoughts as we go along. Now, without any further ado, let's check out what MSNBC analyst Barbara McQuade had to say about free speech and the First Amendment in an interview with Rachel Maddow that's prompting some pretty widespread backlash.
Do you believe the U.S. is particularly vulnerable to disinformation, or do you believe that we're kind of unexceptional and it's the same? We're as susceptible to it as every other country.
Actually, Rachel, I think we're more susceptible to it than other countries. And that's because some of our greatest strengths can also be our Achilles heel. So, for example, our deep commitment to free speech in our First Amendment, it is a cherished right. It is an important right in democracy, and nobody wants to get rid of it. But it makes us vulnerable to claims that anything we try to do to regulate speech is censorship. Of course, the Supreme Court has held that all fundamental rights, even the right to free speech, can be limited as long as there is a compelling governmental interest and the restriction is narrowly tailored to achieve that interest. But I think anytime someone tries to do anything that might limit free speech, people claim censorship. We need to be pragmatic and come up with real solutions. But it is, I think, one of the things that makes America particularly vulnerable to disinformation.
So she raises an interesting question. Does America's strong protection for free speech make us more vulnerable to disinformation? I'm skeptical of that claim. But just for context, disinformation means false information or propaganda often put out by a rival government to try to mislead the public or engineer outcomes. Anyway, I think that over time, the free spread of information and ideas, yes, even false information and bad ideas, eventually leads us closer to the truth than any top-down effort by the government to dictate what is true and what is false. But let's say that I'm wrong. Let's say that the First Amendment does leave us more vulnerable to disinformation campaigns by rival governments. I'm okay with that. It's not an Achilles heel so much as it's just a necessary trade-off that comes with our freedoms. If the price of being free to think, speak, and listen to ideas and information, which is just a basic human right, if the price for that is that sometimes people will believe malicious, false things, that's a price I'm willing to pay. We can then use our own free speech to help try to explain to people why these things are false and shed some light on them. It's not a perfect system, but the implied alternative here by McQuade is that the government should step in and increase its efforts to censor speech and dictate what is true and what is false. That's a prospect that's far more dangerous than any foreign government's disinformation campaign. McQuade's argument relies on the false assumption that omniscient government officials somehow know the truth with a higher degree of accuracy than anybody else, and that they have a pure desire to see truth prevail over falsehood, absent any ulterior motives. That's pretty naive. Bill Clinton never had sexual relations with Monica Lewinsky. Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. COVID couldn't possibly have come from a lab. That's just a conspiracy theory. These are just a couple of examples, but the point here, guys, is that the government gets things wrong too. Sometimes they're simply mistaken, but yes, sometimes government officials lie to the public. So giving the people in power the ability to determine truth from falsehood and censor accordingly is inevitably going to be abused. I mean, it's bizarre to me that an MSNBC analyst of all people can't see the inherent problems with this approach. Is Barbara McQuade not old enough to remember 5 seconds ago when Donald Trump was president and Republicans controlled Congress? Because rightly or wrongly, they believe that much of what MSNBC broadcasts is misinformation or not accurate. Does McQuade really think that they should have played a greater role in regulating speech? how would that have worked out for her and her network? In reality, the only thing that would have protected them is the same First Amendment stringent protections that McQuade is now claiming are our country's Achilles heel. And unfortunately, more and more Americans are gravitating towards this misguided position. And unless that trend reverses, we're going to have to learn the lesson about why free speech is so important the hard way. Alright guys, that's it for this video. Do you agree with Barbara McQuade or Rachel Maddow? Let me know in the comments, I want to know your thoughts. And do consider subscribing and sticking around and maybe even turning on those bell notifications. Plus, don't forget to hit that like button. If you've gotten this far in the video, you must have found something interesting or insightful, so do hit that like button, and I'll see you all in the next video.